As every sane person knows, the first weekend of December is when you should put your Christmas decorations up. So I have decorated my set. And I've got some antlers.
Norway. Definitely Norway. Soil?
A cottage in winter with a chimney but no smoke. What's got you so scared?
It takes you away. It takes you away.
Although the antlers aren't really in shots, and they're making a bit of a jingly noise, so let's get rid of those. Merry Christmas. So, It Takes You Away. Directed by Jamie Childs and written by Ed Heim, and if IMDb is to be believed, also Joy Wilkinson. She wasn't listed on the beginning of the episode though, so I'm guessing that's probably a error on IMDb's part, but I thought I'd throw in her name here just in case. Now, Doctor Who kind of has a bit of a habit of the penultimate episodes of a season actually being really good. Think, I always get these, is it Heaven Sent? Heaven Sent, not Hellbent. Heaven Sent, and think, World Enough and Time. Some of the best episodes in a season sometimes are the episode before the season finale. And while I wouldn't necessarily say this is the best episode of a season, it is a really good episode. So it seems to kind of be fitting with that mould. Now let's hope we don't get the disappointing episode to follow it next week, but that's a whole nother video. There was a lot I liked about this episode. There were some things I didn't like as well. Frog Grace. But we'll come to those later on. For now, let's concentrate on the positives. I thought it was a very atmospheric episode. It kind of had two different atmospheres, because you had the first half of the episode, which was very leading you down the track of, well, it was kind of a horror movie-esque, wasn't it? You had the creepy atmosphere. It was brilliantly done with the music and the visuals all kind of worked together to create this very horror vibe to it, which I thought worked really well. You had the misty Scandinavian landscapes. It was all very cold, and you could see the breath on people as they breathed out. And you had the sort of dark and dingy cabin, and all of that. It evoked a lot of sort of horror movie tropes and vibes. I think the direction here, the cinematography, the use of music, all of that worked together to create this great tense atmosphere, this sort of horror atmosphere that really kept me on the edge of my seat, wondering what was going to happen, building up that mystery, which was really good. And then you introduced the character of Hannah, who I thought did a brilliant job. She sort of added to the mystery, because there was the mystery of what, was she on our side? Once you found out she was blind, you kind of led to believe that she's a good guy, but then she knocks Ryan out, and it kind of goes back and forth, making you always question whose side the characters we meet are on, and who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. And that was just sort of the first segment. Then, of course, we entered into I forgot what they called it, the kind of in-between world, which went even more on the horror vibe. I thought it had it kind of evoked the feeling of the Upside Down from Stranger Things to me. Kind of felt like that was the first thing that came to my mind, was the Upside Down. And it had that kind of decaying feeling to it that the Upside Down has. There we met Ribbon, who was brilliantly played by, I'm going to have to look this up, Kevin Eldon. I knew that name. I should have remembered that name. Kevin Eldon. I've seen him in several things now, and he's always brilliant. He has this very sort of otherworldly nature about him anyway, even when he's playing humans, but it's excellently put to use here. I think I first thing I remember seeing him in is a comedy sci-fi series, British comedy sci-fi series from a few years ago, maybe about a decade ago, called Hyperdrive, which was very good. I liked it. It only lasted 2 series though. Didn't quite have the staying power of a Red Dwarf, but it was very, very funny nevertheless. He was in that, and he was played a weird android-y, alien-y type thing there as well, and he was very good in that. And I like the kind of creepiness he brings to the character Ribbon here. He sort of filled an antagonist role in the sense of being very self-serving, someone who will stab you in the back type antagonist. We also had a creature type antagonist in the form of the flesh moths, which I have mixed feelings on. I think they were a great idea, and I think they worked kind of well in terms of the idea of them. A swarm of creatures that will eat your flesh off is a good way of increasing the tension. I'm not sure about the design and the way they worked visually. I think the visuals possibly let them down a bit on it, because although, yeah, they look like big moths, as they should, I don't know, there was something about the way they moved, the way they looked because they were obviously very big, and yeah, they probably do look like moths do when they're enlarged, but it kind of felt a little bit, it felt like a classic Who type in terms of its visuals look to it. It kind of reminded me a bit of like the creatures from the Web Planet or something like that, just in the way they looked. So I'm not sure they necessarily quite pulled off the look of them, but I love the idea of them. So I really liked the way they built up the kind of creepy horror vibe atmosphere to that first half of the plot. And you had I haven't mentioned the noises coming from the forest around it. I loved what they did with that. I love the fact that it filtered into that kind of horror vibe, part of the soundscape of, you know, building up the tension and the creepiness of what was coming to get them. And I love the fact that it turned out to be nothing. It turned out to be a set of speakers. That was a great twist. Loved that. Now the second part of the episode, sort of after around about the time we got the reveal of the fact that the noise, the thing that was coming for them, wasn't anything that was coming for them. And once they'd got through, most of the team had got through to the other side of the mirror, then it kind of shifts and the tone of the episode changes and we get much more character-driven and a character-driven emotional story, which I thought was a good twist because I was kind of expecting this to be all horror. So to have that kind of flip on its head halfway through-ish kind of, I think, worked really well. And we got some absolutely lovely character development from a couple of our main characters in this. And of course we got to see Grace again. Well, kind of. Not Grace, but we got to see Sharon D. Clarke playing someone who thought she was Grace and then was pretending to be Grace. But we got to see Sharon D. Clarke again, and she's brilliant as Grace, so that was good. Our regulars that really benefit from this episode, I think, were Ryan and Graham. Early on in the episode, you got to see a little bit of Ryan's father issues, in him declaring to Hannah that her father had probably just abandoned her. Clearly, he's projecting his own feelings because his own father abandoned him, and I thought that was really nice to touch on that aspect of his character that we've seen in the past and continue it through to this. We got some absolutely brilliant stuff from Bradley Walsh again. I've said this before, but he is definitely my favourite companion from this new lot because his acting is so good. It's the subtlety he brings to it so surprised me that I was not expecting that from him when he took on the role. But every time there's been a deep emotional bit, the subtlety of his acting has been brilliant. I love it, and he got to show it again here as well, as he got to reunite with Grace, and that was very touching in and of itself. It felt very real, very much in the same style that Chris Chibnall had established earlier on in the series. And then, of course, you got the moment where he has to reject her, and I thought that was really touching. You could generally see the struggle, the emotional struggle he was going through there, and I think that worked really well. And I thought the way they solved it, the way he sort of came to the conclusion that this wasn't the real Grace and he could really believe it, I thought that was brilliant. The way that they used Ryan in that respect, and the fact that she was telling him, Ryan will be okay, don't worry, you don't have to go save him, you can stay here with me. The fact that he then knew that Grace wouldn't say that, I thought that was a brilliant bit of writing there as well. And then, of course, in a evolution of the Ryan and Graham relationship, right at the end, we got what we've been hoping for this whole series. I kind of thought it might come next episode in the series finale, but they got us in with it an episode early. Ryan calls Graham Grandad. Lovely. we've seen their relationship grow over these several episodes, and you know they've had a lot of focus put on them to the detriment of Yaz sometimes, but here it was really nice to see that sort of payoff in the end. And I think probably I haven't been doing the prediction corners, but here's one. I know I've said he's going to die before, but I think he's going to die on New Year's Day now. I think that might be why they're putting it on New Year's, because Graham dying on Christmas Day would be too much of a downer. That might be why they decided to do a New Year's Day special instead of a Christmas Day special. And if they did, now that they've kind of reached that point in their relationship, Graham and Ryan, where he's calling him Grandad, I think he then got a couple of episodes to... one episode to really let that bed in, and then one episode where he can be then taken away from Ryan. Which I think, if they're brave enough to do it, would be absolutely amazing from a drama point of view. So, as much as I love Graham, I think he's the best companion, I'm kind of hoping, because it would be the absolute best culmination of that arc, that character arc, those character arcs. From a storytelling point of view, I really hope they kill him. Even though I love him. So yeah, there was some absolutely great stuff from this episode. I think Jodie was on top form as well as the Doctor. I think she was really good. And and the guest cast were great as well. I thought the themes of sort of fatherly abandonment that tied into Ryan were really good. And yeah, really good episode. However, there are a couple of niggly little points I just want to point out. First one is really a niggly point, but I kind of feel that they've overused this kind of creature from Time Lord folktale, Time Lord fairy tale idea a bit too much, especially in Modern Who. You know, in the last 13 years, I think we've had it several times, and it's, I don't know, if it's feeling a bit like a tired trope. Although it was nice to get a little bit more information about the Doctor's family. Was it 7 or 9 grandparents she has? I can't remember, but she numbers them. Grandma number... what was it, 5? I can't remember now. But, so, yeah, I'm a little bit of an overused trope there. Maybe don't use that again. And, yeah, let's get back to the Grace Frog, because that was the one major hiccup I think this episode had. They were in a realm where, to 2 of the other characters, this entity became things that they would try and people from their past that had died that might be able to keep them there. But for the Doctor, it turns into a frog with Grace's voice. Okay, it's very surreal, but I just feel that they massively missed an opportunity there. I know that Chris Chibnall didn't want to get too bogged down in the past of the show, and they wanted it to all be fairly fresh stuff and not have too many ideas and characters from the past. However, in this situation, it just doesn't make sense that that entity wouldn't become something from the Doctor's past. Given what we know about it, it just makes no sense. So I was kind of hoping of something, either someone we've seen before, so Susan or River or something that we've seen, or if they didn't want to go down that route, if they didn't want to go down the route of having a character that we've had before because they wanted to keep it relatively accessible, introduce a new character from the Doctor's past that you could hint at or something, you know, or bring back the woman from the end of the Russell T Davies era, you know, the one that covered her eyes, you know, something that hints at a bit more mystery even. That would have been fine. We wouldn't necessarily have to know who she was, but just something that had a bit more of emotional connection there would have, to the Doctor, would have, I think, A, made more sense to the plot, and B, would have given more of an emotional arc to the Doctor's character in that bit. So that's my main gripe of the episode, and it did let me down a little bit at the end there. But other than that, I thought, and imagine, I'm going to hark on to this a bit more because I'm really disappointed in this. That whole, you know, her saying, touching goodbye and blowing a kiss goodbye, that, to the frog, just made no sense to me. It did not make any emotional sense. But imagine that scene, having to blow a kiss goodbye to Susan, having to, leave Susan behind there, or someone else really important from the Doctor's past. Imagine that, how much more impactful everything the Doctor said there and everything the Doctor did would have been if it had been someone like Susan. But other than that, I love the episode, and I would probably give it a... I would have been tempted to give it a low 9 had it not been for that little bit at the end there with the frog. But I will give it an 8. I will give this an 8 out of 10. What would you give it? Let me know in the comments below, and any other thoughts you have on the episode, any aspects I haven't discussed. It's December and we have one episode left, so have Merry Christmas, and here are some more videos. Please do check them out. Something YouTube thinks you might like, and here's last week's review if you haven't seen that yet. Do please go check them out, and I will be back next week. Yes, Paige, I will be there in a minute. That's my daughter. Goodbye.